JD Power says new car problems are up, but are we supposed to blame the technology or the polar vortex? I'm Marty Paget, joined by Nelson Ireson and Bengt Halverson, and we're going to talk about JD Power quality results today at TCC on the table.
Yeah, so JD Power, big annual announcement this morning. The initial quality study is one of their most respected and kind of an industry benchmark survey. This year, the news isn't all great. We went from 113 problems per 100 vehicles up to 116 problems per 100 vehicles. And before talking about some of the results, I should preface it and say that IQS is a measurement of problems that owners see in the first 3 months of ownership. And it could be very small issues. Nelson, I think you how did you put this? It's kind of issues in the honeymoon period.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just when you start dating somebody, you get their best foot forward. You don't start to see all of their, potential annoying downsides.
Until like you said, the crazy exes behind them and the horrible bathroom habits too.
I believe that is exactly what I said.
Exactly.
And it's important to bring up because I think JD Power has a lot of studies out there, and when people hear JD Power, they kind of just generically assume quality, and quality in this case is quite different from long-term reliability and durability, which they do a different, better job of measuring in another study.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, this is the 28th year of IQS, and IQS it does cover those small things. Can I pair my smartphone? Is this transmission shifting too harshly? What's that vibration? Those sorts of things. Things that they might not over the course of years of owning a vehicle have that much of an impact, but they're definitely an annoyance.
It's just a range of things that they're trying to measure with this study, and I think it grabs so many intangibles and so many tangibles. I often have trouble looking at it and saying, what should I tell people about this?
Yeah, and so the big news this year was that consumers are continuing to have problems with connectivity and in-car technology. Pairing the smartphone, getting Bluetooth to work properly when you're in and out of a car, getting interfaces to work, getting audio systems to function the way that you want them to, and to keep your settings. Those are fundamental issues, and it sounds like we're not the only ones having these issues with cars. We've certainly seen plenty of kind of little niggles and issues with infotainment systems. The other kind of wild card in this that JD Power mentioned, first, there are a couple outside elements. One of them is that the industry launched a record number of vehicles in the past year, kind of catch up. We've seen this for sure. We're sort of in catch up mode still from the bounce back of the industry, and we're seeing a lot of niche models launching. The first year of any model, you can expect more of these little issues than typical. The other issue, though, is weather, and I thought that curious that Power included that in their release this morning and mentioned it in a couple of places. The polar vortex, the abnormally frozen, rough winter that the Northeast and the Midwest had this year, it probably had an impact on these small issues. It probably didn't set those infotainment systems up for success, and it probably led to more complaints about climate control systems and possibly transmission shifts and that sort of thing.
I think it's it might be telling in some of those vehicles that, hey, this is maybe the first time the person used the seat heaters in really cold conditions, and maybe they finally just realized they only heat the seat bottoms, not the backs. Or my friend who has a Hyundai Elantra, heaters in the back seat, and I have a $60,000 German luxury car that doesn't have seat heaters at all. So again, it's that huge range of what quality means to that individual that is, it's not troubling, but I think it's more difficult to define than what they do here.
Absolutely. And sort of on top of the weather thing, just to circle back to the technology deal and the new car launching, most of the problems found were in the newly launched cars, not the models updated from previous years, right? Like 13% more problems were found with the updated models. And it was those little things, Bluetooth pairing, audio systems, but on top of that, you add in the cold weather thing with the heating, ventilation, engine and transmission complaints, which were two of the biggest ones. As a result, that's, of course your transmission is going to shift rougher in the cold weather, at least until it's up to full operating temperature, because that's how mechanical things work in the cold. But people don't necessarily, you buy a new car, you expect it to just work, even if it is, -10 outside this year.
But at the same time, a couple of the vehicles that were brand new last year were tops in their categories too. So, I think some brands benefit from overperforming expectations, like the Kia Cadenza and even the Buick Encore. But then, and so does Porsche, which I always find odd. Is you think they would be the most finicky, demanding customers on the planet, and yet 911, Panamera, they consistently perform at the tops of their categories, and Porsche was the top brand overall too. So clearly, they're doing something right to please the most difficult people to please on the planet.
Yeah, Porsche has done remarkably well, and it did make me wonder: is there a correction factor for people simply not driving vehicles as much? I mean, I know that a lot of Porsches will get garaged quite a bit more during certain parts of the year, so there must be some kind of mileage correction factor in this metric too. We're just not sure, to what degree.
Oh, that's an interesting point, because of the Cayenne, maybe the vehicle that Porsche drivers would use the most in the winter, did not finish at the top of its category. It was the sports cars and the Panamera.
Yeah.
So I forget what the other top finishers were, but I know that the Koreans did really well overall.
Yeah, the Koreans did really well overall. The Kia Cadenza and Sportage. GM had 6 segment awards, which is really impressive, and it's a good contrast to all the recalls in the news. Buick Encore, Chevy Malibu, Chevrolet Silverado HD, the Suburban, the GMC Terrain, the GMC Yukon. Those were all at the top. Ford had the Edge and the F-150 and the Lincoln MKX. Nissan had the Juke for a tie in its segment, as well as the Infiniti QX50 and QX80, and then the Chrysler Town and Country was at the top of its segment, as well as the Dodge Challenger. And then I thought this curious, that on a brand basis, Mazda was way down near the bottom, not at the bottom, but near the bottom, and yet the Mazda 5 and the Miata, the MX-5 Miata, were segment leaders.
And those are their lowest volume cars.
Unfortunately, yes.
I don't know what to make of that, because I've owned one of their cars before. It was an exceptionally well-built car. Maybe that is high expectations for what we all trumpet in reviews, not meeting that, especially on the infotainment front. I wonder if they just don't score well because they don't have some of the systems, or some of the systems are priced really high or only available in the upper trim levels.
Yeah, and I think of that in particular on the Mazda 3 and the Mazda 6, that TomTom system that on the connectivity front was launched in those vehicles, and those vehicles were launched in the past year, and so issues with that probably came into play.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the segment winners list, right, it's almost like an inversion of what the proverbial man on the street would expect. GM at the top, Hyundai, Kia next, then Ford, Nissan, VW Group, and Fiat Chrysler all tied in the middle. Mazda, Honda, and Lexus below them. You know, but if you turn that around and consider it in terms of value, right, like the amount of equipment you get at a reasonably priced vehicle, so it's going to skew at least possibly the amount of vehicles in the results. Maybe it does make sense because GM, Hyundai, Kia, they're both offering a lot of content at rather low price points in a lot of their vehicles, whereas Ford, Nissan, VW, even Fiat have kind of gone slightly more mid-range to premium in some of their pricing segments in order to get the equipment you really want. And, of course, Honda has long been a victim of that pricing problem, pushing the Accord well up into the upper $30,000 range for a nicely outfitted vehicle. And, you know, Lexus is the only luxury brand even on that list aside from the one Infiniti, of the segment winners, you know, not the overall brand, because Porsche obviously topped that. But that's possibly one way to look at the, to me, rather unexpected segment winner results.
So are you saying love can be bought?
Oh, totally, and the cheaper the better.
Well, I should just point out that Jaguar is second place, and they did really well again this year. They've done well for years in this metric, which probably that goes to show that when you look at a number of these brands, Porsche, Jaguar, Lexus, Hyundai, Toyota, Chevy, Kia, a lot of those top finishers, you know, they're not necessarily conservative in their approach to infotainment, but they're not some of the most daring deployments, we'll say that. Right. And a lot of the brands that have, you know, made a point to be more edgy in their infotainment and their interfaces and their controls are farther down in the list.
Well, I would point out the GM stuff that is a nice balance between the two and probably didn't lose them any points in the survey. IntelliLink and MyLink are really simplified touchscreen interfaces, and they're on a lot of the new vehicles, and they've probably been met with a lot of applause, unlike Q. And you don't see Cadillac and Q filtering to the top of any of these lists. The interesting thing that I'm just pulling out of the story now is that loyalty on a brand basis is below 50% now. So if you've, you know, as an auto industry person, if you sold a car to this person, you know, 1 in 2 chance that they're going to come back and get the next one again. I mean, it's just tons of marketing money that's got to keep shoveling onto the fire to keep people interested.
Yeah. And if you're if you have if you're of that elite top tier where you have no problems per vehicle, then you're lucky to break over 50% on the loyalty.
Yeah.
So you know, it's a crucial 5 or 10% difference that having these little niggles in the first 3 months versus not could make, you know, over the course of several years. We should take a second to look at the bottom,
yes.
The bottom of the showings this morning. It's always interesting. We see a few brands that have been near the bottom for years. Jeep and Mitsubishi tend to be at the bottom in this survey, and I know there are a number of reasons for Jeep. Some of it just has to do with customer expectations. Never quite lining up with, you know, what the products are, or just having expectations that are unusually demanding, and maybe the weather comes to play there too.
I wonder how much the Wrangler pulls down their overall scores, because I would think that Grand Cherokee would fare pretty well, and even the cheap compact SUVs, the Compass and the Patriot, which continue to sell these days, defying all expectations. But I'm really shocked to see Scion in that list.
Yeah, I'm shocked to see Scion on that list. I'm also shocked to see, Mitsubishi had one launch this past year, but other than that, they're their lineup. Well, no, they had two. They had Mirage also. That probably altogether, you know, pushed their rating down. The Cherokee, you know, JD Power emphasizes that launches do bring these numbers down. Jeep had the Cherokee.
Problem considering the fact that it had so many transmission reprograms and dealers weren't without trucks for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Now the bottom place finisher on this list by far was Fiat. I mean,
that's a number we haven't seen in years.
We're singling this brand out because it is a number we haven't seen in years. 206 problems per 100 vehicles in the first 3 months. The closest finisher is Jeep with 146. It's a big jump. And I pushed JD Power to single out a particular issue with the 500L. They didn't. They got back to us just before running this hangout and said they didn't say any particular issue, but they said it was all 500L. So
wow.
The 500L launch apparently had a lot of issues. I'm guessing that the dual clutch transmission had something to do with it. Possibly other issues with that vehicle regarding the interface.
So the world's only Serbian, or our only Serbian-built vehicle, is following in the footsteps of the last Serbian vehicle we had.
Yeah.
Yugo GV. Nelson, I know you've driven Abarths, but I don't know if you've driven the 500L. I really haven't seen many initial flaws, on the press cars that we get presented with. The 500L, I have to confess, a couple of things that surfaced from that were kind of a poorly functioning infotainment system, not being able to put my feet in with the manual cars into the pedal box, and just some weird gaps and trim fits that you wouldn't notice even on the Fiat 500. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen anything like that in the press cars that you've had, but I think that 500L sales kind of reflect its position here too.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that it's it may be too early to jump in with pitchforks and such on the 500L, but yeah, it is an outlier at this point, and I'm very curious to see what happens with Consumer Reports reliability ratings, and then with some of JD Power's longer term metrics.
But as long as they keep doing ads with their Tumblr page and GIFs, then everything should be fine. Yeah. All right. Well, that will bring us to the end of this hangout. So we will have more on the JD Power story as we can explore more details. But for future hangouts and other issues, follow us here at the Car Connections YouTube channel. And guys, thanks for joining me.